Welcome back to Morning Footy. Let's take a look back at Bayern Munich's impressive second season under Vincent Kompany. The Bavarians shattered the Bundesliga goals record on their way to a second straight Bundesliga title, scoring a whopping 122 goals in league play. One of the keys to that high-scoring attack was Michael Olise, who earned Bundesliga Player of the Year honors with his 19 assists. And of course, the focal point of that mighty attack was Harry Kane, who scored a European-best 61 goals across all competitions last season. Bayern delivered a double last year, adding their first DFB Pokal title since 2020 to the Bundesliga title that they won. Hopes for a third treble in club history were dashed, though, when Bayern fell in the Champions League semifinals to reigning champions PSG in a wild tie that ended 6-5 for PSG. So what are the moves that Bayern have made in hopes of adding another Champions League trophy to their cabinet this season? Well, they've added Morocco's Ismail Saibari from PSV and Germany's Nathaniel Brown, who came from Eintracht Frankfurt. Bayern has released several more players than they've brought in, though. That includes parting ways with Leon Goretzka and Rafael Guerreiro at the end of their contracts. So, Lahoud, taking a look at all the moves that Bayern have been making in this summer, how do you anticipate their chances of being able to truly challenge the likes of a PSG or an Arsenal for a Champions League trophy this year?
Yeah, look, I'm very high on this Bayern side still. I love that they got Ismail Saibari. I think there's some other clubs that could use a player of his quality. He is an exceptional footballer. And it's time that players from the Dutch Eredivisie make moves like we've seen your Frankie de Jongs make of seasons before. The big concern still will be at the back. I think last season, with the way that Vincent Kompany plays, they high press, they play a high line. We saw some of the fatigue catch up to him and some of the injuries catch up to him. When you look at the depth, we'll get to the front three, which is insane to begin with. But when you look at the depth, the midfield was where I thought they lost their way. Alex Pavlovic was very good against Real Madrid, but he was poor against PSG. Probably one of the most poor displays we saw him play all of last season. And Jamal Musiala, we know he had that brutal injury from the Club World Cup. This is a massive season for Jamal Musiala because of not just Bayern Munich, but he needs to get his confidence back given that the European Championship is coming in 2 years' time. That back four, though, Nathaniel Brown coming in, Alphonso Davies, the injury track record he's had, that is a massive get. Nathaniel Brown, we saw glimpses of him. Everyone here saw him at the World Cup. I thought he was a massive bright spot for the German national team. And I will end with this. Bayern Munich need to address the goalkeeping position. Manuel Neuer was a problem for Germany. Manuel Neuer, I believe, will be a problem for Bayern Munich this season. At some point this campaign, if you're Vincent Kompany, you need to consider what life after Manuel Neuer looks like because the writing is on the wall slowly but surely, and that's my personal opinion.
Was that a little look of shock in terms of what he said about the goalkeeping position, or were you just taking a look up, Geoff? That looked like a look of shock.
I was looking at the reserve keeper. You're big. I thought that was a comment on Neuer. Has he put on, I thought he's put on weight or something.
That's great.
Yeah, look, it's the same question, isn't it? The German national team, and they went out horribly. And it was the Ecuador game, wasn't it, where he had the horrible fumble as well. But I always say this about goalkeepers. We highlight their mistakes, not their magnificence. It's always the same. It's a big call. Big call for him to make. And also as well, with Bayern Munich, it's the same conversation about Bayern Munich. It's a given that they will win the Bundesliga. So all the signings they make is an assault on the Champions League.
Yeah. In terms of their attacking trio that we were talking about, you have Olise, you have Harry Kane, you have Luis Diaz. It felt like that maybe should have been enough last year, but it wasn't. So do you think that they will be enough this year? Or do you think it's these added pieces that are really going to make the difference for them this year?
Yeah, I definitely think it's enough. I mean, this team could have won the Champions League last year. They ran into a juggernaut in PSG who just played better throughout that tie. This is the most electric attack, in my opinion, in world football right now. And then they add a Saibari as well. We talked about Musiala. We had him. I know we had him there on our depth chart, but Saibari can play behind Kane.
Yeah.
He can take that spot from Musiala if there's an injury, if there's a need for rest. I think they're even more complete attack now with the addition of a Saibari, with Lennart Karl, with another season under him, obviously after that injury, and he's recovered. I think they have even more firepower in that attack, where now they can rotate a bit from these three. These three are going to be the leaders of this team without a doubt when it comes to scoring goals, but they have even more to support these players. So yes, absolutely, they are still, even with minimal business, still one of the favorites to win the Champions League, and in my opinion, the most fun team to watch in all of Europe as well. That may be because the back line is a little bit suspect, so they have to score a ton of goals to win games. It makes it even more exciting, but this is a team 100% one of the favorites to win.
Well, let's bring another voice into the conversation, our CBS Sports German football correspondent, Rafa Honigstein. Rafa, good morning. Thanks for joining us. I know you're on vacation, so thanks for carving out a little time to join us and do a little work while you're trying to rest up after the World Cup. But looking at all the moves that Bayern has made now so far in this summer, what do you make of their chances to truly contend for Champions League again this year?
I think their chances are about the same as last year, perhaps slightly better because of the depth that they now have in certain positions. You talked about this. In midfield, there should be another signing, young Senegalese player, Barisa Pakundia, coming in. He had a short spell at the World Cup, real talent, 18-year-old. That's a deal that's about to be done in the next few days. So there'll be a bit of depth there as well after the departure of Leon Goretzka, of course. We're buying a little bit thin, I think, in midfield, you mentioned, last year. But perhaps most crucially, there is a sense that in his third year, the team will be even further along understanding the very specific, very detailed, and very, frankly, exhausting demands of Vincent Kompany ball. At Bayern, there's a lot of running, there's a lot of man marking. Things can look quite chaotic at times. But of course, the flip side is that you create so many goal-scoring opportunities, more than any other team in Europe, and they scored more goals than anyone else. And they might score even more this year. But of course, a bit of balance would be welcome, especially if you consider that 6 goals, as you mentioned, that they scored in the game against PSG in the 2 games wasn't enough to go through. So that is, of course, something that they look at. But in terms of overall squad depth, in terms of how, the understanding and the harmony and this fairly small squad works in terms of egos being not overexhausted and everyone being happy, Bayern feel that they're a very good spot there right now.
Rafa, can you give us some perspective as to the level of disappointment in them not winning the Champions League last season? Because on the one hand, they're expected to win the Bundesliga, so the only trophy which is a major challenge for them is the Champions League itself. However, PSG are an exceptional team, a fantastic footballing team. To go back-to-back champions in itself shows you how good they are. And they ran them so close. And they were full value for both games as well. So is the feeling there, well, we're a long way off. We've got to go to another level to beat PSG and the other teams of their ilk? Or was it one of, listen, we were unlucky there. It could easily have gone our way. We're not far off this.
It's much more the second option, really, Geoff. Remember, the first season under Kompany was not that successful in the Champions League. They got knocked out by Inter in the quarters. They had heavy defeats by Barcelona. They lost to Aston Villa. They lost to Arsenal. There was a sense of this team being not quite ready yet for an assault on the Champions League. But after last season, where they also finished second, of course, in the group stage, there's much more a belief and optimism and expectation that this team now is very much in the mix, and they'll be in the mix again. If now Kompany, does what Pep Guardiola did, which is to go into semi-finals 3 times and lose it 3 times, then of course the conversation changes. Then it becomes an accusation. Then it becomes a real disappointment. But this now being only his 3rd season, there's still a sense of Bayern growing, of progressing, of him taking them closer and closer to Europe's elite and closer to that promised land of another Champions League trophy. So he still has a lot of credit in the bank. And this year, I don't want to say it's a free hit because it never is at Bayern, but he doesn't have to win the Champions League the way that Pep Guardiola had to win the Champions League to be considered a success. We're not at that stage yet. of course, another season without that big trophy and with domestic dominance will then create that expectation going forward. But we're not quite there yet.
Rafa, one of the big disappointments for me personally, I know you can, definitely entertain this, is some of the players for Bayern that we didn't get to see at the World Cup. One of them, an 18-year-old phenom, Lennart Karl, who you put on our radar early last campaign. What are the expectations for him, Rafa? Because he showed moments of brilliance, and he showed that, for me, he's ready to take that next step for Bayern Munich.
Yeah, and it's exactly that. It's about becoming even more established, becoming a regular the way he was in the first half of the season before injuries and one or two indifferent performances, we have to be honest, stopped the progress a little bit. The hype died down a little bit towards the latter stages. Sorry, I just remembered that they got beaten by Arsenal this year, not last. So, sorry, slight correction, but everything else I think stands. Karl has to get fully fit, has to then find space in an attacking lineup that is more congested thanks to the arrival of Saibari. Hopefully also thanks to Jamal Musiala coming back to full fitness. So it's by no means a given he's going to get as much game time as he did last year. Serge Gnabry also is going to come back. He needs to play somewhere. So he'll have to find a role. He'll have to find a position and a role and a decent amount of game time to create that progress. But I think Bayern will handle that very smartly, very sensitively, and will find the right balance for him to be involved just enough to see him grow and benefit from the experiences that he had. You saw every game made him better, and they want to keep that going, while at the same time, of course, not upset the overall equation when you know that certainly on his right side, his preferred side, there's a certain Michael Olise ahead of him.
And that's exactly where I'm going next, because with Michael Olise, we know we're talking about one of the best footballers in world football. And he had a fantastic World Cup, set a record for assists, had a little bit of a shocker in the third place game, we'll say that, missed a couple of big ones. But he's coming in, obviously, with a ton of rumors around him. Real Madrid was sniffing around. How did they convince him to stay? How long are they expecting him to stick around? And how important is this season for Michael Olise for this team to go out and try to win the Champions League?
So, I mean, the last question is easy to answer. He's hugely important for Bayern. You saw when he had a bit of an off game in the second leg against PSG, that was one of the things that made the difference. He wasn't that much of a factor, and Bayern didn't quite look as potent. So he's a huge, a huge factor in all of this if Bayern are to win the biggest trophies. Now, the fact that he's still here after this World Cup is half the battle won. I think other players, maybe in different years gone by or different clubs, would have made that move already. But Bayern, with a long contract behind them and no release clause, had enough leverage to put a stop to that quite quickly. Also, they have this relationship with Real Madrid where it's very friendly. They don't tend to do things that upset each other. So Real Madrid are never going to try the kind of hostile takeover that they've done with other players in the past. Kylian Mbappe would be a good example of how they sometimes do things very differently. So now, of course, the story is going forward, can they extend his contract? Can they convince him, both in terms of the sporting ambition, but also financially, of course, that he should stay a little bit longer? And that's going to be the next few months or the next couple of years. Watch out for that. But I think it's very open. We don't know yet. I think another season like that might well put him in a conversation for the Ballon d'Or, and then it's going to seem more difficult for Bayern to keep him. But right now, they're happy that he's still there, that he's playing there for next season, and they'll try everything to make that longer.
Indulge me, one-word answer. Can anybody else win the Bundesliga other than them?
Not next season, no.